Season 4 of From just ended, and MGM Plus already confirmed something that changes how we should watch every episode that came before it. Season 5 is the final season. That is not a rumor. That is the studio, on the record. So everything the show has planted since episode 1 now has a deadline. Every buried clue has to pay off, and I think one clue has been sitting in plain sight since the pilot. Before I get into it, here is the one sentence you need to remember for the next 15 minutes. The show has told us twice, in 2 different seasons, through 2 different characters, that how you do something matters as much as what you do. Hold on to that. It is the key to everything I'm about to walk you through. Let's start with facts, not guesses. The finale, titled If a Tree Falls in the Forest, aired June 28th on MGM+. Jade and Tabitha were trapped in the bone chamber underneath the bottle tree from the previous episode. This week, they finally pull the children's remains out of the ground, bag them, and try to escape while Boyd's group hauls up the rope ladder from above. It goes wrong almost immediately. The rope has been sabotaged. Tabitha falls. An earthquake hits. The sky goes dark in the middle of the day, which lets the night creatures walk around in broad daylight for the first time in the show's history. And once the group finally claws their way back to town, one detail gets glossed over fast. The bones are real. They belong to the Ankoui children. That question is closed. But here's what is not closed. Nobody in that town can tell you what to actually do with a bag of children's bones. Burn them. Bury them somewhere new. Take them somewhere specific. The show hands the residents the single most important object in its entire mythology, and then has every character shrug when asked what it's for. That gap between having the object and understanding the object is the whole engine of this final season. Recap after recap pulled the same quote from the finale. The man in yellow standing over the bones basically tells the town, "Sure, you found the key, you just have no idea where the lock is." Every write-up treated that line like a summary of where the mystery stands. I want you to treat it differently. Think about who is saying it. This is a character who has spent 4 seasons lying to people's faces with a smile. He told Tabitha the plan could either save the town or unleash something worse, and then walked away without clarifying which. This is not a neutral narrator handing out exposition. This is a man whose entire survival strategy depends on nobody connecting 2 dots that are sitting right next to each other. So when he says the residents don't know where the lock is, I don't hear confirmation that the mystery is unsolved. I hear a man who is relieved that it still looks unsolved to everyone but him. Rewind all the way to Season 1, Episode 2. The Matthews family has just crashed into this town. Ethan has a seizure, and during it, he describes a place. He calls it the Lake of Tears. At the time, this plays like background noise. This show throws out 100 unsettling details in its first hour, and this felt like one more. Here's why it isn't. On this show, seizures are never just medical. They're the town reaching into somebody, and Ethan is the show's most reliable source of information that hasn't happened yet. His drawings, his visions, his half-formed warnings, they keep turning out to be exactly right, episode after episode. When the show's most trustworthy character has his very first supernatural episode centered on a specific location, that location is not decoration. That is a flag planted in Season 1 for the writers to come back to. And they buried it. For almost 3 full seasons, the Lake of Tears barely gets mentioned. Which, if you've watched the show before, should tell you something. From doesn't drop threads, it buries them and waits. The numbers on the bottle tree waited 2 seasons for context. The town's true name waited even longer for a translation. Silence on this show is not the same as abandonment. Season 4, Episode 2, is one of the bleakest hours this show has produced. Jim is dead, and his body is found strung up with a message for the entire town. Knowledge comes at a cost. Hold that phrase too, because we're coming back to it. After Jim is confirmed dead, Ethan sneaks out to the wrecked RV and sees his father's spirit. And out of every single thing a dying father's ghost could say to comfort his son, this is what Jim uses his last words for. Find the Lake of Tears. It's here. I need you to find it. Stop and sit with that choice for a second. The show had one resurrection moment to spend on this character, one chance for a goodbye, and it spent that moment pointing at a location from episode 1 and saying, essentially, go there. You do not burn a scene that emotionally expensive on a detail that doesn't matter later. Shows do that for answers, not for scenery. Here's where the thread widens. When Ethan's Lake of Tears vision resurfaces in Season 4, it pulls him toward Victor's room in Colony House. Victor is the resident who has survived longer than almost anyone in that town. He's the one who begged the others not to touch the bottle tree, and he was right to. So think about what the show is doing structurally. It takes its most reliable prophet and its most experienced survivor, and it routes both of them toward the same body of water. That is not coincidence math. That's the show using its two most trustworthy characters to underline the same location from two completely different angles. And Victor's connection runs deeper than his own survival. His mother, Miranda, believed the way out of this town was to free the sacrificed children. She went looking for that answer decades before Tabitha ever showed up, and the town killed her for trying. Tabitha inherits that exact same mission the moment she meets Victor in the tunnels back in season 1. The visions, the pull toward the children, the conviction that escape runs through releasing them rather than fighting the monsters. Two women, decades apart, handed the same unfinished job by the same town: free the children. When the residents finally dig up actual bones in the finale, that is not a new plan appearing out of nowhere. That is the physical object finally showing up for a mission the show has been running since its very first season. This is where that sentence I asked you to remember comes back. The town runs on ritual. Multiple characters, across multiple seasons, have said some version of the same warning. The right ingredients, done the wrong way, don't just fail to work. They backfire. Apply that to the bones. The residents have the ingredient. They do not have the instructions. Jade told everyone the bones would shield them in the chamber. They didn't. That was a lie to keep people moving, and it tells you something important. Even the people closest to the mythology don't actually understand what they're holding. They know the bones matter. They don't know the mechanism. Real-world funeral traditions give us a pretty direct comparison here. In Hindu practice, cremated remains are released into a holy river specifically to free the soul for its next stage, a rite called Asthi Visarjan. From has spent 4 seasons building a mythology around unfinished grief, sacrificed children who are never allowed to rest, and a town that punishes anyone who tries to properly bury its dead. A body of water built specifically for release fits that theme almost too well to be an accident. So here's the shape of the theory. The bones aren't a weapon. They were never a shield either. That was Jade's lie to keep people moving. They're remains that need to be taken somewhere and released correctly. The lock isn't a door hidden in a cave. The lock is a destination. And the show has been naming that destination since its 2nd episode. I want to be straight with you about where the evidence stops and the theory starts, because I'm not going to sell you certainty this show hasn't earned yet. The series has confirmed the bones are real, confirmed the Lake of Tears is a recurring, emotionally loaded location, and confirmed the children are somehow tied to the town's mechanism of release. What it has not done is put those two facts in the same sentence. Nobody on screen has said, take the bones to the lake. That connection is a bridge I'm building across a gap the writers are clearly saving for season 5. The show also hasn't pinned down where this lake physically is. Ethan and Tabitha did find a lake earlier in season 4, but multiple recaps pointed out that whether it was actually the Lake of Tears, Jim meant remained unclear even after they found it. What they pulled out of the water, there was a net full of scarecrows, not answers. The geography of this town bends on purpose, and the writers are clearly holding the map close for a reason. And there's a darker possibility worth naming honestly. The man in yellow told Tabitha this plan could unleash something worse than what they already have. What if that's the one true sentence he's ever spoken? What if taking the bones to the water doesn't free anyone? What if it opens something the sacrifice has been keeping shut this entire time? The town might not be a prison, it might be a lid, and the residents might be about to lift it themselves. Here's what the finale leaves us with. The talismans are gone. The town has effectively lost its defenses. The man in yellow appears to be walking around wearing a dead man's face. And somewhere in the woods, he crosses paths with the boy in white. A scene that all but confirms these two have been locked in some kind of ongoing contest over this town for far longer than the residents realize. Layer all of that on top of the bones sitting in a bag with nowhere to go, and season 5 only has one direction that actually pays off everything the show has built. Get those children to water before the dark gets to everyone first. Everything lines up. The prophet who saw the lake in episode 1. The father who spent his last words naming it. The survivor whose family died trying to free these exact children. And a villain who spends an enormous amount of energy making sure nobody puts those pieces together. That is not the profile of a man who thinks the lock doesn't exist. That's the profile of a man protecting one. So that's the case. Built on what the show actually put on screen, with the gap between evidence and theory marked clearly so you know exactly where I'm guessing. Tell me where you land. Is the Lake of Tears the answer this whole show has been building toward? Or is the man in yellow telling the truth for the first time in 4 seasons, and the bones are about to become the worst mistake this town has ever made? Drop your theory below. If you want the next breakdown the moment Season 5 drops, you know what to do.